Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our webcast tonight. We are so happy to have you here or there or wherever you are in this wonderful country of ours. I am Tim Vatapka. I am your host for the event tonight. And since this is sort of a debut webinar for at least the Salem Lakes Preservation Association, I want to take just a minute or two to orient you on how we're going to run the event, because it's a little bit different than maybe some other events you've attended or some of the other Zoom type platforms you're comfortable or familiar with. This will just take a little bit of a housekeeping minute or two. So first of all, you logged in and you should now be somewhat familiar with how to go to webinar console looks. The only thing that you really need to worry about or concern yourself with is whether or not you're going to submit any questions through the chat console there. There will be no cameras for anybody in the audience. There will be no open microphones. So any of that kind of AV is not going to be anything that any of the members of our audience will need to worry about. So if you have a fine meal that you want to eat or a hamburger you're just trying to down before we get going here, go ahead. No one's going to watch you. As far as the event itself goes, I just want you to know that we will have a Q&A session later in the presentation. However, if we cover something somewhat early on, feel free to jot it down, and then we'll just take it up at the right time. So we're not going to stop the momentum or anything like that, but I will be eyeballing the questions, and depending upon who among the panelists is the right person, they'll have a chance to chime in. We are recording this event tonight, so if there's a chance that someone registered and could not attend live for scheduling conflict, or you want to come back to watch it again, it will be available. You'll probably get an email shortly after we're done tonight that has a link in it that'll enable you to watch it. I will also post links on our social media feeds, and it'll be available on our website at some point, more likely Friday or over the weekend. So no worries, if you missed something, we can definitely give you the entire presentation for your convenience later on. There is a deck. You will see some slides here with some data, and I want you to know that if you go into the handouts tab, you can actually download the entire deck. It's not 36,000 pages, it's probably about 15 or so. So you can certainly go ahead to the handouts. There's one file in there, it's a PDF. It's called Salem Lakes Public Webinar with today's date. You can click on that, give it a hard tap, and it'll download to wherever you put your downloads, and then you can just have, you don't have to worry about taking copious notes or anything like that. Let's see, those are the housekeeping things. As far as who and what we all are, let me give you a quick sense of what we're going to cover tonight. I'll put my agenda up here on the board. And basically what we're going to be talking about tonight is, again, we'll talk a little bit about the intro, how tonight's event will flow, but I want to give you a minute of who is on our panel, who's in the cast tonight. And you already know me, I already identified myself, I'm Tim. If you're on social media, if you've been on our website, if you've received an email, if you've seen some pretty pictures, or even have downloaded the newsletter every year, that's me. I produce all of the marketing material or communications material for the association. I am on the board of directors, have been for the last couple of years now, and lifelong second home Salem resident in the summertime, and third generation. Yeah, third generation, so we go back a ways. And I'm also on a couple of committees, including the Milfoil committee that we are representing tonight, as well as the fundraising committee. So my name gets bounced around quite a bit. So that's who I am. And Ross, why don't you take a second and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ross Ogilvie. I've been on the lake for since probably 1987. I'm the chair of the Eurasian Milfoil Committee of the Salem Lakes Preservation Association, and I've been quite busy here trying to organize managing this milfoil.
Ross undersells himself. He does a lot of technical work. He's definitely the engineer of the group and figures things out that I can't even imagine how. But he's a welcome member, and I'm glad to have him with us tonight. Emily, you're up.
My name is Emily Volgamore, and I am with Solitude Lake Management. I am the project manager for this project, and I'm also a senior aquatic biologist. So really looking forward to achieving some goals this year and discussing tonight just how we're going to do that. So thanks so much for having me.
Welcome. Michael, hello.
Hello, yeah, I'm Michael Lou Smith with Arrowwood Environmental. Live in Hardwick and have been working with the Milfoil Committee at Lake Salem for the past 6 or 8 months or so on the 5-year management plan to figure out how we can get a handle on the exploding population there. And we'll be kind of involved with some of the post-treatment surveys and kind of tracking milfoil and other species in the lake over the next few years.
Awesome. It's been great working with you so far, and you know, we expect a lot of busy summertime activity going on here. So we're going to get right into it. So the next section of tonight is we're going to talk a little bit about the event, the history of milfoil, how it arrived here, when did it arrive here, and some of this you may have seen before in other presentations if you've been tracking with us or if you attended last year's summer annual meeting. We did a whole presentation on this, so you know, bear with us if you've already seen some of this before, but I'll do it very quickly so that we spend less time on the history and more time on what we're going to be doing now and where we're at. We'll talk about, you know, what mitigation strategies we've had in place since the very beginning of this and all along, and we'll go from there. We'll talk a little bit about what is this herbicide we've all been hearing about called Priscillacor. How effective is it? What is the science behind it? What does it actually do? How is it applied? And what success has it had? And Emily will walk us through that. And then we'll talk a little bit about budget and finance situations. You know, how are we going to cover this? You know, what's the situation if we were to do this the old way or the way with Priscillacor? And you know, Ross will walk us through what some of those numbers will look like. And then we'll talk a little bit about, you know, what to expect when we actually get the permit approved from the DEC and we are permitted to apply this herbicide to the lake, what you can expect to see or do when the crew from Solitude gets out there and does their thing. So just to try to give you some appropriate mass and what to expect there. And then, as I threatened our panelists, we will have a Q&A section, which I will handle any questions that get tapped into the chat. You know, I'll make sure that we cover them, and you know, there's no time restriction on this. We'll hang on the line until every last question is answered, so long as it's relevant to what we're talking about today. So that all done and said, thank you for bearing with me on that. And here we go with the history. We in Salem were very fortunate to not have EWM in the lake for quite several years, even though other lakes in Vermont, not to mention elsewhere in the country, but we'll talk about Vermont, there were other lakes downstream and upstream from us that had it, and we were free of it for quite some time when it was first becoming an issue statewide. It did get noticed by volunteer inspections back in 2017. And if you don't already know what this nasty weed does, it basically invades a lake. It is not a native species to the lake. There are other milfoils that are indigenous to the area. Northern milfoil is one of them. It looks very similar. If you look at that picture down there in the right-hand corner, there's a native species, and then there's the Eurasian. It's a little hard to see once you pull those strands out of the water because the leaflets kind of collapse, but you do develop an eye for it. There are biological differences between the two. The one we don't want is the one on the right, which is the Eurasian milfoil. And if you've paddled around the lake or swam in the lake or even just went by in a boat, it's pretty hard to not see the patches that have been basically spreading quite rapidly. So this plant, if left alone, will choke out native species of plants. It will get entangled in boat props. It encroaches on swimming areas. It's just not just, it's labeled as an aquatic nuisance, and that seems like a harsh undersell. It is an environmental hazard, to put it quite bluntly. So that's where we're at with that. It was first discovered, as I said, in 2017. And we've done everything from try to check it at the boat ramps, you know, by putting greeters out there who will, you can prop wash, you can inspect all you want. Sometimes it gets caught and sometimes it doesn't. That picture of that trailer you see with a load on it is a result of a dash harvesting over the course of a day or two. So that gets taken to the stump dump over in nearby in Ross. Where's the location of that stump dump?
I'm sorry, what?
The location of the stump dump that this gets hauled to, that TJ takes it to every week or two.
Actually, I don't know.
It's about 12, 10 or, it's about 8 or 10 miles. Is it? It's in the Derby Township, but it's anyway. We don't need to get into but that trailer just represents a mound of it that gets harvested. Here's the track of it. If you look all the way to the right, a map that was put together with GBS plotting and inspections, originally found, no surprise, right smack in the middle of where the boats come in and out of our lake. That little 50 by 50 patch indicated in bright purple, that's where it was first discovered. And it seemed like a 50-50 patch, didn't seem like a big deal at the time. And within a year later, that patch more than doubled. And then just 2 years later, look at what the survey netted. It found it in various places throughout the lake, in pretty dense material. And then in 2021, and then just last year, it pretty much occupies the vast majority of what is called the littoral zone. And before I lose anybody on that term, littoral zone is essentially the area of a water body that is shallow enough to permit light to foster plant growth. So that's why you see it around the perimeter of our lake. Why it's not in the shoreline to the extreme north in that patch of clear zone there, and why it's not so much on the right-hand side, I don't know. But it's everywhere on pretty much everybody's lakefront. So there's no question that we've got to do something about this. So the mitigation we've done so far, originally we had a greeter program. The folks were stationed at the boat ramp. We put some flyers up there. We had some people who were watching boats going in and people who were watching boats going out. And they were trained to inspect and look for not only the Eurasian water milfoil, but any other invasive species that would be detrimental to the lake. EWM is obviously our target of address because that's the most nastiest of them all. So we were doing volunteer-based visual inspections. In addition to that, we had portions of the lake carved up. People would go out and paddle and report what they saw, and we were doing really well for quite a while there with that. When it was a year after it was discovered, we hired a professional diver who would go out there, and we would have a pontoon boat go out with him and a crew of folks who would spot, and we would send him down there and he would harvest literally by hand. He knew how to harvest the stuff and pull it up with that netting, that meshy sort of bag netting, and we would dispose of it that way. That was back in 2018. Then we started to realize that very quickly it was outgrowing faster than hand pulling could do anything for. So we then went to what is called dash, and that photograph there was just last summer. I was out there on my kayak taking pictures, and that is the dash boat that you see there. It's a pontoon boat modified with equipment, and essentially it puts a suction machine over the side with a diver that goes down, and they flip the switch, and that thing is out there for a good half day to a day at a time, sucking up mounds and mounds of milfoil. Remember that image of that trailer that I showed you before? That's what gets pulled in from a day or two of that kind of haul. And that was 2021, 2022. And we've also been doing, obviously, a lot of public awareness, education, trying to make people aware of the fact that milfoil is out there and what we could do as boaters and and kayakers and lakeshore owners, property owners, to do our part to try to keep this thing from spreading. And we were doing a pretty good job of making concerned neighbors looking for this stuff, making sure that if they saw anything on their boat or their motors or anything like that, or even on their kayak paddles, to just not let it go anywhere else in the lake. Because as we've said over and over, once one little tiny piece breaks away and floats off downstream and sinks again, you've got yourself a whole nother plant and a whole nother colony. So then we've done the newsletter coverage, we've had website, social media, presentations. Again, last year I think was the most extensive presentation we ever had, including a video taken with an underwater GoPro camera. If you need to see that, if you haven't seen it, go to our website and you'll see it. It's pretty clear imagery, video of what milfoil looks like when it's under the water, 8 feet down. Most people don't have that opportunity to do that. So if you haven't already done that, go on the website and check it out. And just because these are friendly people that we want to put pictures to, this is a look at our greeters last year. Again, this program operates pretty much around Memorial Day through Labor Day, give or take a few days before and after. Obviously, weather permitting, if it's a miserable day and it's pouring rain, we probably don't have someone stationed there, but there's usually somebody there at that lake, right over by the shanty at the boat ramp, and every day. And of course, that is, depending on funding too. So none of this stuff is free. But they are trained to be basically stewards to inspect boats, again, coming in and boats going out for milfoil and any other native species, non-native species, sorry. And these info cards are there, and there's no shortage of information at that shanty at all times. Just a quick couple of numbers to overwhelm you with. Annually, we typically do anywhere between 500 to 600 boat inspections per year. Last year, that number was off the charts. 808 boat inspections were done last year. Yeah, they were busy. So that's the picture of where we've been at with it. That's the picture of how far it's come into the lake and where it's gone. And now, Ross, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about the mitigation costs and the financial picture.
So the financial picture, in 2018, we spent the better part of $6,000 on basically the diver surveying and hand harvesting. And I guess we did some dash harvesting then too, though I actually don't recall that. Oh no, that was the initial dash harvesting that we did. Yes. So, okay, so we spent about 6,000. There was very little dash harvesting done then. 2019, we pretty much spent a little over $6,000 hand harvesting, and we put in a lot of bottom barriers. Same kind of thing going on in 2020, where we spent upwards of $10,000. Again, hand harvesting and bottom barriers was primarily what we were doing. Again, in 2021, we spent again, $9,000, $10,000. This was when we actually started with our current diver with dash harvesting, and that was the majority of what we spent that money on. With the exponential growth that we've seen last year, 2022, we spent over $30,000 primarily on dash harvesting. So things have really just, the one message I have to just repeat here over and over again is we lost control of it right from the get-go. We were not taking this seriously enough, and we really needed to be attacking this much more aggressively than we've been. And it has definitely gotten away from us at this point.
You know what? It just occurred to me, we say bottom barriers, and we're familiar with that. And I realize that because we're so familiar with it, it can be easily taken for granted what that is. So can you just take a quick second to identify or define what that is. What is a bottom barrier?
Yeah, a bottom barrier is a sheet of it's very much like a screen. It's a screen like what you'd have on your windows. The material is, and it just unrolls, and it's about 4 feet wide, I think. And we have a lengths of it that are anywhere from 10 feet on up to 50 or 60 feet in length that we put out. And the diver goes down, puts it down, and then puts rebar on top of it to hold it down. And it kills everything that's under it. So it's not something that you want to, unless you have a really dense region of milfoil, it's not something you want to use because it will kill everything under it.
Right.
It's also the most expensive method of controlling plants that we have. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I figured I didn't want to lose anybody because, again, we see it all the time because we're there and we're dealing with it, mud and all. And, not everybody in our audience would know what we mean by a bottom barrier. So worth defining. And also, this picture doesn't even begin to count up and tally the amounts of volunteer hours and literally the sweat and poundage lost and in labor intensive projects that some of our own committee members. I have to shout out to TJ Jackman. I have to shout out to Ed Wells, who are involved in our committee, and they've been out there doing GPS inspections and plotting. They've been involved in some cases. We've had our own people donate the use of the pontoon boat. I know Roger Cartier, our president, has done that. I know Dennis Bond has done that, and it's not clean work. It's downright messy work. So I have to quickly shout out and acknowledge their contributions to that. And if I miss anybody else, I'll make sure I get them in there at some point. So
yeah,
so
it would be worth just mentioning that trailer full of milfoil was 1/2 day of dash harvesting. And so, I mean, the 2 trailerfuls really could easily go to the dump in a single day. There are just huge amounts that come out of the lake with the dash harvesting, and there's just a lot of milfoil out in the lake.
definitely. So let's talk about budget considerations now for 2023.
So so we had a lot of constraints on us, and the biggest constraint that we have had, well, financial first. We have a finance committee that is making great strides in getting us funding, and we're very appreciative of that. The other huge constraint, other than money, is the Eurasian milfoil has spread beyond 40% of the littoral zone. So we have the littoral zone is, I've forgotten, it's 207 acres of littoral zone, and we can treat in any single year 40% of that. And so that means in any single year, we can treat only 83 acres. And that we can, I say treat, that's with herbicide treatment or dash or bottom barriers. So the only thing we can really do if we want to be the most economical is to do the herbicide treatment. So our plans for this year, for this summer, are to spend about $100,000 on the herbicide treatment to treat all 83 acres that we can treat. What doesn't fall into that category of the 83 acre limitation is hand harvesting. So we plan to do as much hand harvesting as we can come up with, and that's with volunteers as well as paying divers to do that. So that's another expense we are planning on for this particular summer. And then we are not doing any dash or bottom barriers because we've already consumed, if you will, all of our 83 acres that we can treat. In addition to those things, this coming summer, we have pre-treatment monitoring, post-treatment monitoring, which will help us treat in the coming years, figure out where we're going to treat and how we're going to treat. And then we have the greeter program, which will continuously go throughout all 5 years of our plan. And then we have permitting and just Salem Lakes Preservation Association expenses. So that's kind of the first year. And then the subsequent years, we just kind of put in arbitrary amounts, not arbitrary, but our best guess. And we will refine what treatment we do in year 2 through 5 after we see how well we did this summer.
All right. Is Prosilacor the best method for handling this, Ross?
It's the most cost effective, and we believe it's the most effective also. So one of the things that late I think it was in December or maybe January, we finally finished this table, and it's very, very helpful in guiding us in what the best way to treat. What's in this table are different treatment methods: dash, Prosilacor, bottom barriers, hand harvesting, against different densities of Eurasian milfoil, trace, sparse, moderate, and dense, and what our diver likes to call dense vertical wall, which I think you can imagine he's up against this vertical wall and he's trying to get rid of it. But anyway, those are the method, the densities against the prices of what it costs per acre per year. And you can see the 83 acres is all moderate and dense that we plan to treat this year. And for those rows that you see in there, Prosilacor at $1,200 per acre per year, since there'll only be one treatment, is by far the cheapest in the dense. And dash ranges from $3,500 to $7,000 per acre per year. It's very costly to do that. With less dense, it can get more cost effective, but and then the bottom barriers, it's just their bottom barriers are very expensive, and they cost a lot to put in and install, and you have to take them out at the end of the year. So that's quite costly also. Hand harvesting is also quite expensive, but I think you can see in kind of skimming through that table that the cost per acre per year of Prosilacor is very inexpensive or very cost effective. The other thing that dash does tend to fragment the plants, and so we do end up with the diver does take precautions putting up his screens and such to try to keep the fragments from floating away. But there are more, I think, fragments from dash harvesting than I think we're going to see with the Prosilacor. So anyway, that's our budget consideration, and I think this table is very helpful in guiding us.
Absolutely. And if anyone straggled in as we got started, I want to reiterate that this is a lot to digest, but it's also available. We're not hiding anything here. If you want to go to your console, there's a tab there that says handouts. There's one file, only one file that says Salem Lakes Public Webinar with today's date. everything you see here on screen, you can download right as we're doing this live. So, again, I'll make it available elsewhere, but if you just joined us in the last 5 minutes, you probably didn't hear me say that at the top of the hour. So anyways, this is an excellent piece of data, and thanks for presenting that, Ross. Anything else on it before we move on?
Nope.
All right, I'm going to put Emily on the spot. We're going to talk a little bit about the effectiveness of Priscillacor. And before I do that, I just want to assure everybody that we aren't just arbitrarily putting this herbicide into the lake. We have researched this thing up and down, left and right, north and south, and we've done our homework on the science of this. So, when Emily gets to this point in the presentation, she's already got the association back of her and supporting this. So, Emily, you're up. Talk about what we're facing with this.
Thank you so much. So I just want to take a moment first to talk about Priscillacor before we go into efficacy and case studies and then the plan for Lake Salem. Priscillacor EC is actually a water-based liquid formulation of the active ingredient fluoroxypyr benzyl. It's a mouthful, but really what it is it's a synthetic auxin herbicide. And it specifically works by mimicking the action of the plant hormone auxin, which regulates growth and development in plants. So when applied to target species, this active ingredient disrupts the normal growth process, leading to uncontrolled growth of plants and that ultimately succumb to the herbicide. So this is a selective systemic herbicide in that it's taken up by the roots of specific plants rather than targets foliage of all plants. So all in all, it's incredibly effective and selective towards milfoil. Priscillacor EC was developed in 2010 and was approved by the EPA in 2017. Between 2010 and 2017, this active ingredient or product was extensively tested and evaluated by regulatory agencies worldwide and has been found safe and effective to use when in accordance with the label. And I believe it's somewhere, I think the figure is between when a product comes out and when it's registered by the EPA, it goes through dozens and dozens of rounds of testing, and it can take upwards of $10 million to be registered. So a lot goes into making sure that these products are safe and effective for aquatic use. In fact, Priscillacor EC is actually described as virtually non-toxic. You can even look it up on their website, virtually non-toxic to aquatic organisms and humans, and has an incredibly low toxicology profile. So it's not going to hurt your loons if you have loons. It's not going to hurt your waterfowl, your fish, virtually non-toxic. In general, this product was given a reduced risk classification from the EPA and is designed to reduce risk of our human health, non-target plants, and our general water supply. One fun fact is that this product requires up to 100 times less active ingredient than other conventional herbicides and still retains longer control of target species. So it's a fast-acting product in that it does not stay in solution very long and is readily taken up by plants. Priscillacor EC is incredibly efficacious in controlling Eurasian water milfoil, as I mentioned. So just last year in Vermont treated lakes, we saw, or even I personally saw, complete reductions in all treated areas just 1 month after treatment, and even sooner, and complete absence in some treatment areas all throughout the fall. And we are expecting to see little to no milfoil in most treated areas come time for spring surveys this May. So Priscillacor EC was first used in Vermont in 2019 under DEC issued permits and is now considered the go-to herbicide for Eurasian water milfoil. It's readily used throughout New England. It's been used in a handful of lakes in Vermont, over 50 lakes in New Hampshire, and even Massachusetts, and so on. So I'll share a success story in the next slide. So Lake Iroquois, I don't know if anyone is familiar with Lake Iroquois in Heinsberg, Vermont. It was first treated with Procelicor EC in 2021. And this is one of my favorite stories because during the fall comprehensive survey, where we go out and evaluate not only the efficacy of Procelicor EC treatments, but also the impacts to non-target species that are native aquatic plants. During the survey, it was found that the entire lake saw control of Eurasian water milfoil. So there were no plants found. Thus, no additional herbicide was needed in 2022, nor are there even plans to treat this year in 2023. And as far as I've heard, they still have control of Eurasian water milfoil populations. However, their tentative plans did include limited hand pulling or dash if needed, and the operative word is if needed. So there's a significant decrease in cost when using Procelicor EC in the long run, just from that. In other Vermont and New England lakes, we are seeing upwards of 2 to 3 years of control where no regrowth has been found. So last year, Lake Cortonia, Lake St. Catherine, Lake Fairley, and Lake Beebe were all treated and saw good, if not complete, control within treatment areas by either the 1-month post-treatment survey or the fall comprehensive survey. So as I mentioned, we expect to see little to no regrowth in these treatment areas during our spring survey, and can expect to see up to a 3-year retainment time from just that one application. So I would love to take a moment to talk about Lake Salem and what to expect during the day of our treatment. So a Solitude applicator, one of my colleagues, a C-Pro herbicide manufacturer representative, and I will be conducting the pre-treatment survey on May 10th of this year. I'm super excited to get out on your water. I've never been, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your lake. As it stands, 83 acres are planned for treatment. The exact delineation and acreage may be adjusted depending on what we find during that survey. Overall, areas with dense and moderate Eurasian water milfoil growth will be targeted for herbicide treatment. And these treatment areas, like I just mentioned, will be finalized shortly after the survey. And they need to be finalized within a week or two after the survey, because a notification to the DEC and to abutters must go out within 30 days of application. And it's the DEC that gives us the final approval to go ahead with treatment of Procelicor EC. So once we get the approval, treatment is scheduled for Wednesday, June 21st. And signs will be posted along the shoreline to notify any visitors, any frequent users of treatment. The Vermont licensed applicator that I bring on my survey, and either another licensed applicator or myself, will be applying the prescription to Lake Salem. And we will be utilizing either a work skiff or an airboat. And one of my favorite parts about Procelicor EC is that it's subsurface injection. It's not a foliar spray. So when Tim and Ross asked me for photos of treatment application, the photos we have really just look like someone driving a boat, because you don't even see any herbicide coming out. It's all subsurfacely injected into the water, so nothing is sprayed over the water. Treatment is actually applied using a GPS with treatment areas preloaded on for accuracy to make sure we really are staying inside that target area. And after treatment, we have a detailed treatment report that must be signed off by the association. It includes water quality parameters, a detailed list of what equipment we used, how we applied, what conditions were like, what we observed. So a lot goes into this, and that's ultimately sent to the DEC, and it goes into part of their records. Following treatment, the association will take water samples with bottles that Solitude will provide, And these samples will be sent to the manufacturer's lab to confirm target application rate. Now, out of an abundance of caution, but not necessary, no use of Lake Salem will be permitted on the day of treatment. However, swimming and wading can resume 24 hours later. So the next day you can be using your water for domestic, for swimming and wading and fishing. And this is really just out of an abundance of caution. Water use for domestic purposes or irrigation will resume once the lab confirms those Procelicor concentrations from those aforementioned samples, or it's a week after, whichever comes first. And typically, given the concentration rate that we are going after, we see that we are able to open up the water well before that week period. Usually it's just a few days. It takes the lab to turn around within that time. But even if we had the lab on site, it wouldn't take more than, I would say, 48 hours for water to open up for domestic and irrigation use. The target concentration rate that we are looking for is at or below 2 parts per billion. And just for reference, last year, all results came back as under 2 parts per billion or non-detectable. So we're really anticipating the same to happen for Lake Salem. The final step of treatment is I will come back about 1 month after treatment to evaluate the efficacy of treatment and write up a nice report for the association, which can be shared. Like I said, we expect to see good success this year using, it's a safe and effective product. It's cost effective, virtually non-toxic, and I'm really excited to see how this is going to restore Lake Salem. I think you are going to notice a night and day difference, and I'm really excited for all of you. I think this is going to be a great success story.
Absolutely. I wanted to go back and underline or underscore a couple of things there before we start getting into questions. In fact, let me put the map back up as the visual. Again, we've got some pretty heavy infestation there that has outpaced, the technologies and the techniques we've been using so far. We've seen documented evidence that this is a safe herbicide. We are not throwing, biplane strafing runs of crop dusters over the lake. There's not going to be any strafing runs of chemicals being sprayed from the air. We're not dropping bombs into the lake. This is a highly researched, evidence-based type approach. Obviously, it's had some success track record, not just in Vermont, but elsewhere in the country. There's plenty of data you can go out there and find. And I also wanted to reiterate the fact that it's part of an overall strategy. We still will need to be just as vigilant and have eyeballs on the greeter program and around every single camp owner or property owner. Besides doing Procelicor, there's still going to need to be, some care, tender loving care applied to the lake. Some caution about boating aggressively through some of these patches. It's basically, it's not the overarching solution to the entire infestation around the lake. It's a major one that's going to help us get caught up and breathe a little bit and get a little bit ahead of this so that we can catch up and kind of in this arms race against nature, if you will. So I wanted to just make those points before I forgot. And you've already answered 2 or 3 other questions about, what can we expect to see? Are you going to have heavy equipment out on the lake? Is it really 1 day or is it a whole week? You said it's really just a day, not a whole week. I'm just scanning the questions that we're looking at here. Can my dogs swim in the water? Yeah, I mean, dogs, humans, whatever you want to throw out there within 24 hours, and that is an abundance of caution. So, yeah, I'm going to take a look at some questions here. Again, folks, use that go-to console, and let's see. Oh, good question. I didn't even think this one was coming up, but I'll throw it out to anybody. Can docks, and I'm going to throw wraps in there, but can docks be in or should we wait till after, I guess, treatment?
Docks can be in. We can maneuver around docks and there will be some flow. in terms of our dilution model. So we are anticipating there will be good movement, water's transient. So you can definitely put your docks in. It's always helpful when they're out, but not necessary. Thanks for that question. That's a good one.
Excellent question. Another one is I'm going to put the map back up because not everybody may be familiar with the anatomy of the lake structure. So hang on one second. Okay. The next question had to do with the area in the upper left corner labeled N. This is the area of where the lake drains into the Clyde River, or otherwise known as the outlet. The question is will there be a large amount of, sorry, I'm mixing questions. What about the area where the lake drains into the Clyde? This is the dense area labeled N.
Are you asking about efficacy or?
I'm assuming, unless they clarify, that will we be treating in that area, I guess is the gist of that question.
So any designated treatment area will be treated, and because Priscillicore is taken up so rapidly by plants, by milfoil, we typically don't see, unless there is a significant high flow year, we typically see great results regardless.
Yeah, and just to clarify, you know, the actual treatment areas haven't been defined yet, and they will be defined after the pre-treatment survey, so we get the most up-to-date information about where those really dense areas are. And so specifically, you know, about that N area, we can't really say if that specific area is going to be treated yet, but we'll know after the pre-treatment survey.
Excellent. I should also make sure that folks out there understand that this milfoil species, EWM, is not in Little Salem. Much to our surprise, when we did a survey a while back, we went upstream and went into that body of water, and not an ounce or a fleck of milfoil was found in there. So it did not come downriver from the Charleston area upriver or anything like that. It came into the lake through man's own boat trailers and whatnot. And as you saw on the map earlier, it started at the boat ramp. So that's how it got in. Question is, will there be a large amount of debris, I'm assuming weed type debris, that the lake homeowners will need to clean up after the application?
No, in other Vermont lakes, like last year in Lake Hortonia, Lake Beebe, Lake Fairleigh, we noticed, and this is very common, we noticed that the plants pretty much disintegrate. So during that 1 month post-treatment report, I'll take pictures to actually show you what your milfoil looks like. And if there is any, it's very discolored, it's incredibly brittle, and it disintegrates in your hands.
And that's, you know, one other reason to treat earlier in the season. You basically have less biomass that you have to treat and would be added to the lake. So the earlier you can get it, the better.
Absolutely. Another question, I'm not sure we're going to have the answer to this one. And Ross, back me up on this unless you have another idea. This has to do with the restriction on the 24-hour use restriction. How are we going to enforce the 24-hour use restriction, especially at the boat dock or at the ramp?
I actually have no idea. So that's something that's a good question, and I would assume we would. I mean, the permit I think would allow us to. Well, I assume the permit's going to explain to us how that happens, and hopefully we'll be getting that permit approval pretty soon.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have signage up and everything, but I don't know that we're going to actually have anybody manned at 2 o'clock in the morning if someone really wants to put a boat in the water.
Yeah, signage will go up, and there'll be abutters notices as well. We haven't really had an issue with anything in the past in Vermont, but you never know. And I'm not so sure it's included in the permit, but I am happy to do some investigating and find out ways we can prevent people from using the water for that 24-hour period. But I will just reiterate that it's out of an abundance of caution. It's an overly out of abundance of caution rule. You can essentially use the water if you wanted to. We just recommend you wait 24 hours.
Right, absolutely. Oh boy, we're getting questions. Thanks for hanging in here, guys. Let's see. One thought was, can we physically close the boat ramp or take it out or put some sort of barrier? All good ideas. I don't know that taking the boat dock out is a solution we can handle, but we can put all kinds of little plastic chains and things of that sort. But we'll cover that as we get into it. I don't mean to make light of it, but that is definitely a consideration popping up. So we'll do the best we can to handle it. Please repeat the schedule and timeline for pre-treatment and treatment. So Emily, that's back to you if you want to roll through that again.
Absolutely. Pre-treatment, the survey will be done on May 10th. It should take us, we'll spend some time, so I'm not sure how long it will take us, but we'll certainly be out there for a better portion of the day. And treatment is scheduled for Wednesday, June 21st. So then after that, you have the 24-hour period. And in terms of irrigation or domestic use, we're waiting for those samples to come back from the lab, or 7 days, whichever comes first. And then after that, I will be back in July, about a month after treatment, to assess efficacy.
Excellent. Okay, I'm waiting to see if there are any other questions. It looks like we had a question on the budget. So Ross, as you get ready to handle that, let me call that up on screen. This is the 5-year plan. And the question is, hang on, things are moving. That's why I'm lagging here. Every time a new one comes in, I lose my place. The 5-year budget seems to remain the same. Would it not decrease after the first application?
We hope so. And I'm pretty certain if we were treating all of the infested areas, it would absolutely be coming down, no question about it. One of the things that we're contending with is there's, I think, 120 acres of infestment. And we're only able to treat 85 of it. So there are going to be regions, and they aren't as dense. They're the trace and sparse regions that are still going to be infested, and we're not sure what the appropriate treatment would be in subsequent years, but we're not holding our breath that we're going to annihilate this in the first year like Iroquois did. We're hopeful that we can, but we're not treating the entire infested areas. So that's a little scary for us.
The other thing about this 5-year layout with the budget is that it's really an estimation. And you know, the way the plan is written is that it's going to be as adaptive as possible. And so we have to see what it looks like at the end of year 1 to really determine what is the next step for year 2. And so, yes, hopefully the numbers will go down in terms of the numbers of costs that will be required. But we need to, like Ross was saying, we need to plan for the worst and, you know, hope for the best kind of thing.
We're dealing with nature here, folks. So, you know, we're doing the best we can to put man-made rules and regulations attached to this. And sometimes nature has a way of kicking back on us. So that's a pretty good 5-year estimation at this point. Okay, a couple more questions. Is the town, and we're talking Derby Township, is the town helping to pay for this?
You want me to take that?
I don't.
Yeah.
You
do. So yes, absolutely. The town, we went and applied for or asked for some of the ARPA money And the town has agreed to, in 2023, help us to the tune of I think it was $75,000. And so that was the very significant support. And we'll have to come up, the association will have to come up with a balance. And then based on that, based on 2023, how effective we are at managing this with Procelicor, they will then potentially dole out some more money in year 2, 3, 4, and 5, depending on how well we have done in year 1.
And we have been very transparent and in communication with the town throughout this. I know I was involved in putting this data together for the town with Ross, Roger, Ed, and TJ back in the middle of July, I think it was. And you know, they were impressed with the data that we've already been putting together on this. So we definitely are in touch with them, not just, you know, when we're up there in July and August and so forth, but throughout the year. A couple more questions. The restriction on the 40%, is that state imposed restriction or limit? That's the question. Is it coming from the state?
Yes,
Yes.
that that does
Go
come
ahead.
from the state. Yeah, as part of the nuisance control permit, they have that restriction.
Okay. Here's a question about the timing. The June 21st date, Emily, this is going to be back in your camp. Is this due to things like water temperature? Could it be done earlier in the year? You know, can we talk about why June 21st is the target for Salem Lake?
Yeah, so this is really the optimal timing for Procelicor in Vermont, just because the biomass is low enough where you're not having any water quality issues or just an overabundance of biomass to control in the first place. But the water temperatures are warm enough that you're starting to see increase in growth and the plants will actually take up the herbicide. In Vermont, this has been our most efficacious treatment period in the past. So best bang for your buck. We just want to make sure that we're timing this perfectly for you guys. And this is what we're seeing is working well at other lakes in Vermont.
Yep, that's excellent. We had a couple of similar questions related to that, so that was excellent. Now we're talking about the application. We're talking about boaters and so forth. So, for instance, is there any plan or need to mark the areas that are treated to remind power boaters to stay away from those areas? And can power boats impact the Procelicor application itself? So, kind of a two-part question.
Yeah, we just because it's in the middle of the week, we haven't really had any run-ins with other boaters in the past. It's certainly beneficial when we don't have to dodge boaters as we're applying, and we certainly don't want recreators using the water when we're treating. So that might be something that we should discuss maybe after this call, a way to kind of prevent those things from happening. But nonetheless, you know, we would be happy to politely inform boaters that, you know, we're treating, this is what we're doing, and why they might not want to be using the water at that time.
Yeah, the technology doesn't exist where we could put up force fields just yet, huh? Okay, I think that's it for the questions. This has been excellent participation among the people in the audience. And again, as you look at the data after we're done here, you've downloaded the deck and you'll want to scrounge around through some of the slides or something else occurs to you. This is not your only opportunity to raise any questions. You know, certainly you can go to our website and you can find the Salem Lakes, it's Salem Lakes Association at gmail.com is the email address, which is a lot to write down by just me saying it, but you know, it's there. There's a contact us tab and you can certainly submit questions there and we'll get the right people to answer them when we're offline. And other than that, I just want to thank our panelists for really engaging with us on this one tonight. You've been great to work with even when we first got started. So it was great to have to be on camera with you all and do this live. Ross, thank you. Emily, thank you. Michael, thank you. And I want to thank everybody in the audience. Any closing comments? You know what? I'll throw it out to you guys. Michael, we'll start with you first. Any closing comments you want to make?
Not really. I think we covered most of it. It's the plan to control milfoil in Salem is, it's more than just the herbicide. The herbicide is really what kind of people are concerned about, and rightfully so. But it is an integrated plan, and including, herbicide and DASH and the greeter program and harvesting, and it's a heavy lift given the level of milfoil that you have there now. But I feel like this is the best approach if you're going to get anywhere with it. So we're hoping for good control this coming season.
Emily, what do you want to do? Anything you want to wrap up?
I completely echo what Michael is saying, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what goals we can achieve this year. And please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I'm always here. So thank you so much.
Excellent. And Ross, I'll let you go, but first I'm going to have one more thing to add when you're done. So folks, hang in there 1 second. And Ross, anything you want to sum up?
Not really. I think we covered kind of the plans for the summer and everything, and so I think it's pretty well done. And again, if any, as you have said, if any questions, certainly reach out. Be happy to answer whatever we can.
Excellent. And folks, I will put together a post-webinar survey that will go out via email, either late tonight or tomorrow morning, or however fast you open your emails. There will be maybe a little 3 or 4 question survey. And that survey will include an open-ended question field that you can put in. Do you have any questions that you'd like us to handle? So that might help trigger some things while it's still fresh in your mind. So that's a post-event survey that we'll put together for you again afterwards. Other than that, again, thanks everyone for hanging in there with us. And I will end off on that and wish everyone a good night. And we'll go from there. All right. Ciao.
All right. Thank you.